figure out what that first step is going to be. And I find the best way to do it is to write it in a vision statement as if you've already achieved it. So it could be something like, I am debt free at the end of 2025. Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. So today I have my producer, Kevin, back so he can ask me more questions and annoy me. But so we're going to talk a bit about the year end and how do you know if you've done good or not. And these are actually Kevin's questions, not a viewer question. So we're going to go ahead and go through his questions and see where the conversation leads. So welcome, Kevin.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I annoy you. I think it's annoyance with love.
You don't annoy me. You don't, really.
Annoyance with love, hopefully. So Paula and I were texting the other day, and I said, we just did an episode on our podcast about how Spotify sends you a little thing at the end of the year. It's called Spotify Wrapped, and it tells you, this is the song you listen to the most, this is the artist, this is how many minutes, all this stuff. And we did an episode about self-improvement wrap-up. What would your self-improvement wrap-up look like? And I sent Paul a message, and I said, I think you should do an episode on what makes a successful financial year, and then how do you wrap it up, and what do you look at? Because, I don't know, I think it's easy to get to the end of the year and say, yeah, did pretty well.
But did you really? Did you really?
What does that mean? So
Yeah.
what are you looking at the end of the year, and then what would you consider... What are, I guess, your measurements of success, but how does somebody else define that?
So the first thing, of course, I start off the year with goals. Some people do, some people don't, but I do. So I'm actually working on my 2025 goals right now. And so what I'll do at the end of 2025 or at the end of this year is I'll say, okay, these were my goals in January. How did I do? So if this was not one of my goals because I carry no debt. But if I had that my goal was to be out of debt by the end of the year, then I would look to see, did I accomplish that? Did I get out of debt? Am I still in debt? What happened? Why didn't I? Did I not have enough income? Did I not plan properly? Did I add more? And so you're going to want to kind of self-reflect and then look at the facts to see how you did achieving that goal. So it could be debt repayment. It could be, increasing your 401k balance. It could be maybe your goal is to buy a house. Whatever that goal is, did you achieve it? Great if you did. Did you succeed and overachieve? Or did you not achieve it and why?
Do you look at the best purchase of the year and the least optimal purchase of the year? Is that something you would suggest people look at?
I don't know. I've never thought about that. That's a really good question. I know my best purchase of the year, of course, is my new home. So that excites me. I wonder if I had a purchase. Yeah, I made a couple of things that I probably shouldn't have.
You care to share with the class?
Oh, what would I say that I purchased that I probably shouldn't have? I think lots of times you think you really need something and you really don't. Yeah. So I know I try to use the 24-hour rule. So if I don't, I put it in my Amazon cart and then maybe tomorrow or the next day I'll go back and determine, do I really need that or not? And then, but sometimes I just, click.
They make it easy. Food's the one for me. You can't wait 24 hours. I'm hungry now. I can't wait 24 hours to see.
You know what I probably waste a lot of money on is grocery shopping, because what I'll do is I have the best intentions of eating this throughout the week. And then, it's hard being single, I think. You waste a lot of food. You think you're going to do this, and then somebody calls and says, hey, let's go to dinner. And of course you run because you don't really want to cook dinner for yourself. But so I've wasted a lot of food. So probably get better at that next year would be really a good thing.
Same. And I'm married, so it's worse. I thought it would be better, but it's like there's two of us that are delusional in how much and what we're going to eat. So it actually makes it worse.
I know.
If somebody, yes, in an ideal world, 2024 is getting ready to start. You're setting
2025.
goals. Well, no, I'm saying jump back to 2024. So at the beginning of 2024, you sat down, you said, these are the goals. This is what I want to focus on. Awesome. Let's say somebody didn't do that. And now we're getting towards the end of 2024. what can they look at? What are the things that they should be looking at in order to determine whether or not they did better than last year?
Well, you can look at, first of all, your investments. Did they increase? Did they increase compared to maybe the industry standard? So let's say the market, I'm making up numbers. Let's say the market was up 20%. Well, how did you do? Were you up 3? Well, why is that? Is that because you're way too conservative and you need to adjust that? Or if the market is, if you're doing well, it's hard for me not to go back because you don't have goals. I mean, I think subconsciously we do have goals, even if we don't put them on paper, and we want to be at a certain place in our life. It's just kind of look and see where you're at. If you look and say my debt went up, well, why is that? Why did my debt increase instead of decrease? It's really hard for me to answer that question without referring back to goals.
I know it's hard. Well, I think that's one of the fundamentals, and that's why it's so hard to answer it, because it depends. Success is personal,
right? And
it depends on what you're measuring and what you set out for. Okay, so from your perspective, how often are you, I know, again, budget and you're checking in, but what do you advise to other people for checking in throughout the year? So let's say we're at the end of the year now and it's a total surprise to someone. When would you suggest they check in? Monthly?
Well, I check in my budget actually weekly. I mean, that might be a little bit much, but it helps me keep on track and make sure that I'm not overspending. And then I look at my investments at least monthly, just to kind of see where I'm at and if I'm on track for my goals. So if I say I used an average projection of 7% to achieve my goals and I'm only, averaging 5%, then I've got to decide, do I need to make changes? Or if I'm averaging 10%, now I'm ahead of schedule, can I, tweak it down a little bit? You have to kind of have an idea on a lot of those things when you're talking about investments. It's good to work with the financial advisor, but have a plan in place. It's really hard to know that you're going to get from where you are today to what your goals are 20 years from now, or even 10 years from now, if you don't have some sort of a plan in place. And then you can always reference back to that plan to make sure that you're on track.
What was your biggest surprise of the year in terms of financials?
My income.
That's hopefully in a good way.
Yeah, it was a really good way. Yeah. So that was really good. And, with buying that new house, I was a little concerned about what those expenses were going to look like. Because, if you follow the podcast, you know that I had to do cement and landscaping that wasn't anticipating and other things that I didn't expect. And it was nice that I was able to figure out a way to pay for all that without incurring any debt.
Yeah. What do you think? Because debt, you said debt several times, and right now we're on the great debt pay down. We've accumulated debt growing the business. We knew we're gonna have to pay the piper eventually. What do you think people don't understand about debt? I know debt for most people is like a bad word, but I don't know if I definitely didn't know why 6 years ago. What do people really need to know about debt?
Well, debt isn't necessarily a bad word. I mean, there's different types of debt. So if you're taking on a debt and it causes you to improve your life, like you took on debt to grow your business. Okay. So that's a good debt, right? A house is a good debt. Bad debts are car payments because, as soon as you pull off the lot, it depreciates so much. A student loan is a good debt because you're getting an education, which will potentially provide you with a higher income and means to pay that debt back. But credit card debt is bad debt. I mean, we don't want to have credit card debt. And the only way to really avoid having credit card debt is to have an emergency fund. So you want to have 3 to 6 months in an emergency fund. So, you're driving down the street and you hit, I know in Michigan, we have a gazillion potholes. So you hit a pothole, blows out your tire, and I know tires are very expensive. I haven't bought any in a few years, but, I hear some people spend $400 to $600 to replace their tires. But if you have that emergency account, then you can go and take that money from there, and then you don't have to use your credit card to pay it off. The bad thing about credit card debt is if you're spending and you have no means to pay it off at the end of the month, then you start incurring interest. And that interest just, what is it? I don't even know. It's in the 20s, 25, something like that.
Yeah, 22. One of my cards is 22%.
Yeah. So think about that. So that purchase that you just made, you're going to pay 22% interest on that. And if I said to you, hey, Kevin, I'm going to loan you money and I'm going to charge you 22%, what would you say?
I would say, I love you, but no thank you.
I'd be like, please, please, please. I mean, that's a win-win for me, because I would get all that interest. So the only way to really avoid that is to make sure that you're building an emergency account. And I know for some people, money's tight. But, if you can at least get $1,000 in there, I mean, if you think about things that happen in your life, $1,000 usually will cover it.
Yeah, wasn't there a stat that said something like 50% of the U.S. population, if a surprise $1,000 bill came, they wouldn't be able to pay it? Something like that?
Oh, I don't know if that is a stat, but I'm going to say yes, that's probably true.
Yeah. How much of it is... Because obviously they're like circumstantially, yeah, things are expensive and you can only discipline your way so much, but how much of debt is discipline and lack of awareness? Like lack of awareness and lack of discipline.
I guess you're going to have to clarify that a little bit for me. Well, discipline is like the lack of discipline is click, 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 click.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty easy.
The lack of awareness piece is... I don't know. I think I was always somebody who said, yeah, no, things are going to change so much this year. Like, yeah, I'll just run this bill up. I'll be able to pay it off by the end of the year. And then something always happens. And I never understood how much the debt compounded. That Correct. Is the thing I didn't understand. Like it's 20%, but it's 20%, not just 20%. Can you go into that?
So I think what you're saying is like, if you look at your credit card statement, and I believe this is true, it says if you just make the minimum payment, it's going to take you 3 years 3 years or 5 years to pay it off, assuming you don't add to that.
Yeah.
So that's the awareness there that it's going to be expensive for you if you add on to or if you have to pay that credit card, and it's just understanding. And there's so many calculators online. So if you go in and just download debt repayment calculator and you put in, I have $1,000 credit card balance and my interest rate is 22% and I'm going to make X. And then it'll show you how much interest you're going to pay over that time period. And that's a huge reality when you start looking. So my son just bought a used car and he's 25, so his interest rate, somebody had said something was going to be like 18% or something ridiculous like that. And I'm like, well, oof, that's high. But I wanted him to do it on his own. He ended up finding something a lot lower. But I had to sit down and explain to him, let's look at this. So if you're paying $14,000 for the car at 18% over a 5-year period of time, this is how much interest you're going to pay over that period of time. But if you pay that $14,000 and your interest rate is 7%, you can see the difference. And he was like, oh my God.
My first interest rate for my first car I ever got was 21%.
Wow. That's a lot.
Nobody could co-sign and I had no credit, and that was like, oh, it's a Mustang though, baby. This is what I want. Let's do it. I don't know what any of this means. Where do I sign? Where do I sign?
Yeah. I wouldn't have co-signed for you either.
Understandable. I don't blame anybody for not wanting to co-sign. All right, so let's say we're at the end of the year and somebody is feeling not so hot about the way that the year went from a financial standpoint. What is the Paula pep talk?
So first of all, I would say to you, forgive yourself. That's the most important thing. I think people hold on to that because they're like, oh my God, I screwed up. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I'm a failure. I didn't succeed. And that's like the worst thing you can do. I mean, you really want to say, okay, I didn't succeed, but along the way, there were positives, and you have to kind of figure out what those positives were and build off of that, and then build a plan for next year. But when you build a plan, you have to take action steps towards it. And I'm working with my coach now, and it's like, okay, she's like, well, what do you envision? And so I'm like, okay, this is what I vision. And then she's like, well, every morning you have to read that vision or that plan, whatever it is, and you want to take a step closer to that. It may just be one tiny step, but the more steps that you take to get to that vision, before you know it, you've achieved it. So who cares you screwed up? I mean, let it go. It's okay, but just move forward. You know, people dwell too much on their failures and not enough on their successes.
I would agree 1,000%. Yeah, I think humans are really good at taking ownership for their losses, not really good at taking ownership for their wins.
So one thing I was talking with my coach yesterday, and I thought was really valuable for me to hear, is we talked about risk. So, and it's not like there's risk in every decision that we make, right? So, but the risk also is not making a decision. And so when you think about, I want to achieve this, but I don't take the steps because I'm afraid, well, then the risk is that you're not going to achieve it. So just take that tiny step forward every day to achieve your goal. So let's say you wanted to change your career. You know, what would you need to do to change that? And if it's, you know, building your resume, okay, one day you build the resume. You know, the next day you take the step of maybe going on LinkedIn and joining LinkedIn. So you take the steps that will get you to your goals, but doing nothing and just sitting here, oh, nothing happened, I failed. Well, you failed because you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I'm convinced, I say this all the time, that one of the biggest misconceptions is if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. I think it's about
like
small steps. It's not, I think it's just, it sounds really good on a bumper sticker. It does. It's like, yeah, that's good. I can get behind that. But then when you get down to it, if you're somebody who has a level 3 understanding of money, a good goal is to get to level 4. That's a great goal. It's a great goal.
Oh,
So
and ask for help.
Yeah.
There's so many people and so many resources that can provide you with help to educate you on what you don't know. I mean, I learn every day, don't you?
Of course.
Yeah. So I don't know anything.
Well, you know more than you did yesterday.
Yeah. But, you know, I think, you know, it's reading books or listening to podcasts or reaching out to family and friends or a professional, and learning what you don't know takes away a lot of that fear. Because if you're fearful, you're not willing to take that risk.
How do you, and we'll get out of here after this, but how do you suggest somebody starts leaning into the discomfort of conversations about finance with people close to them?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, first of all, whoever you're going to talk with, make sure that they're a person that is really good with their own finances. I mean, don't talk to somebody who doesn't get it.
Yeah, helps.
They could give you the worst advice. Don't talk to your coworker. But I think it's just, you know, sitting down with somebody who's not going to judge you and say, this is where I'm at.
I think a little advice goes a long way, especially if you're feeling stuck. You don't have to have all the answers to the test. You just have to have the first answer to get to the next page, and then you can figure it out from there.
You're so good at those analogies.
I do this for a living, and I've
You
done
write
many
analogies?
episodes. Pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much all I do. I'm trying to take something that I can't explain and connect it to something that I can. That's my life in a nutshell. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you want to touch on?
Well, if you haven't started working on your 2025 goals, it's important to start. And I'm not saying you got to list like 100 of them and try to achieve all of them, but just pick one and then figure out what that first step is going to be. And I find the best way to do it is to write it in a vision statement as if you've already achieved it. So it could be something like, you know, I want to be, or not I am debt free at the end of 2025. And how do I feel about that? And what's it going to allow me to do also goes into that vision, because, you know, I'm debt free in 2025. I was able to take a trip to Florida with my kids for the weekend, and I didn't have to put it on a credit card, whatever that looks like for you. But you gotta envision it, you gotta feel it, you gotta act like you already have it. And when you do that, when you get up every morning saying, I'm debt free, that's who I am, then you're going to do the steps that it needs. You're going to look for the opportunities to help you get debt free. So it's the same thing if it's, I'm going to have so much in savings or so much in my emergency account or, all those things. Whatever that goal is, write it down, envision it, feel it, read it every day, and then every day take one tiny step to make that goal happen.
Small steps.
Small steps.
Small steps. It's not sexy to talk about small steps, but I think small steps are the best thing ever of all time.
Yeah. And you just got to believe it's going to happen. I have so many girlfriends that we talk about, because we're all single, and we talk about the fact like if there's ever going to be, are we ever going to meet someone? Are we ever going to do that? And, or you just hear even people talk about, I can't achieve this. I can't do that. Well, when you talk negative, that's what you're putting out to the universe, and you're going to get that back tenfold. Yeah. More negativity is just going to keep coming your way. So when you take those small steps and then along the way, you congratulate yourself on those wins. I mean, take that victory. So if you got, I don't know why I keep talking about debt today, but if you had 3 credit cards and you got one paid off, well, have some sort of a reward for yourself that you have achieved this.
Yeah, the thing we talk about all the time is state, prove, self-assign. So state 2024, or now it's going to be 2025, is the year that I get out of debt. I am out of debt by the end of 2025. State it. Cool. Prove to yourself by your small actions and your commitment. And then this is the big one, and we started at the top of this. When you do it, self-assign it as I did that. I said I was going to do it. I practiced it, and I did it, and now I have more belief in myself, and now my identity is shifting, and
right.
You're a completely different person.
Yes, you do. It's amazing when you start to take those steps and you succeed, how it changes your whole belief in yourself, your whole persona. You start to walk a little taller. And, could you imagine if you're not reaching your financial goals, you're not reaching your weight goals or whatever your goal is, and you just keep looking at yourself in the mirror every day and beating yourself up. It's not a good feeling.
No.
But when you're like, my goal is to lose 20 pounds and at the end of the year, I'm going to weigh X and you lose 1. Well, that's great. Doesn't mean you can go out and eat, but you're one step closer to reaching that goal.
Yeah. Progress is happiness.
Correct. Progress, that's good. I like that one too.
That's from Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins said that. Everything else I said, I think is my own, but Tony Robbins said that. So I can't take credit for it. All right. Anything in closing before I let you get out of here?
No. How about this? Actually, we'll say this. If you have any goals, financial or personal, and you want to reach out to me and get my thoughts or get some encouragement, please do at paulachristine.com.
I have talked with Paula a lot behind the scenes over our years working together, and I can tell you that she definitely walks her talk. We've had a lot of really, really good conversations behind the scenes, and yeah, I've always been very impressed. So I can second that for sure. You're very, very, very welcome.
You're welcome. Well, I think the same about you.
I appreciate that very much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and happy holidays.